system and Sigfox, explaining how they manage it on the French and international side. And I give now the floor to the second co-president of this committee, Yann.
Thank you very much, Adrien. So welcome everybody to this first double digital committee. Digital because everybody is online, digital because we tackle digital topics. So today we are having two, I would say, big people in the, which is Rauti Chey, which is a chief adoption officer at Sigfox, and Jacques Beltran, which is the VP of Global Affairs. So today we are going to discuss about COVID. How is it impacting our way we digitally manage the smart city, how we digitally manage our infrastructure. But they will speak not only about, I would say, the difficulty they had, but they will tackle it from a positive standpoint and how companies manage to use these difficult times to show the preeminence of their solutions and how they use it for the future and to develop new solutions. So now I will give the floor to Rauti and from Sigfox. Rauti, floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Yann. So I'm turning on my camera. So you can see I'm in my garden. Actually, I'm in France and it's very sunny today. So I'm very happy to do it from my garden. But in reality, I'm doing it like this because my kids are inside the house and it's a little bit messy with them. So I have to do it outside. So I wanted to start with you. So I'm the chief officer for adoption at Sigfox. I joined the company 3 years ago, and my role is to build an ecosystem around Sigfox, and especially an ecosystem of different players, like from very early stage, innovators to very large companies willing to transform themselves. So I'm working mainly with universities, labs, schools, startups, SMEs, but also large corporate companies all over the planet. So I'm gonna go through my presentation and give you a little bit of background of what we are doing now with the situation. But not only, I just want to start by sharing my my screen with you and starting to deep dive into the presentation and tell you more about Sigfox. Do you see my screen? I think so. Can you confirm?
Yes, everything's perfect.
Okay, nice. So let's start by something very easy. I'm gonna go through what is Sigfox first and what we have been doing during the COVID-19 crisis. So for all of you who doesn't know more about Sigfox, what we are doing, we are an IoT global network providing the best technology to connect anything, anyone, anywhere. And you will see how we do it later. But the fact is, to make it simple to understand, we have been developing a network globally, and I will tell you where. But the thing is, we wanted to make it lean in opposition with what you know about what we call the 5G. We have been bringing a new concept 2 or 3 years ago. It's called what we call the 0G in opposition with the 5G. So it's not doing the same things, but it's a technology that is allowing us to solve many problems when it comes to connect anything, anyone, anywhere. When we speak about IoT, so Internet of Things, we have been hearing a lot about this last 10 years. Many people think about the millions of new gadgets, consumer equipment, like drones, bracelets, small devices that you put inside your home and can connect you and give you the temperature, these kind of things. When people think about IoT, they think about this, but this is not what we are doing. We don't care about these kind of things. We appreciate this. It's very important for the adoption, but we are more focusing on billions of existing, objects waiting to be connected. And these objects, usually, when you look at them, they don't have a lot of value. When you speak about, a pallet, a trolley, a gas meter, a luggage, this is something that you look at and you don't think there is any value inside these kind of things. But when you look at this, very seriously, and you imagine this kind of things being connected, then it's giving you a big and huge opportunity to make this, to make value and to make development out of these assets. We are focusing mainly on what we call the massive IoT, which is representing the largest opportunity in the IoT market. So everything on the right of the screen, we are not giving into any interest. We are interested, but actually this is not where we're focusing on. We are more on the left of the slide, which is asset tracking, a part of security, and everything related to asset monitoring. So why we do this? Because the technology we have, if you remember my first slide, is based on low-cost devices and sensors to drive small data volumes in massive numbers. This is where we are, targeting and putting our efforts on. Everything related to AR, VR, autonomous driving, advanced automation and control, real-time things. This is not something we are focusing on. We are focusing on low-cost devices and sensors, small devices, small data numbers, because actually what we are doing is we are sending small messages from a device to a network, and these messages can't exceed 12 bytes. So in 12 bytes, you can put a lot of things, but you can't put like videos or music or these kind of things. This is not what we are images and these kind of things. This is not what we are doing. We can send a message with temperature, location, humidity, speed, this kind of things. And when you look at this, it's creating huge business benefits for companies. And especially if you look at the left of the slides, you have hundreds of millions of assets who can be today connected to the internet using sensors. And you can find them in the industry today. And these assets today, if you start to connect them using low amount of money to connect them, if you connect a pallet with a $20 or $30 device, it's not gonna fly because it's 2 or 3 times the price of the pallet. But if you connect it with a $1 or $2 device that will be able to send data on the location of the pallet, or the speed of the pallet when it is moving from a port to another one, then it can bring you a lot of values, and especially to make smart business decisions and improve customers' experience, getting trillions of data. As you can understand, what we want to do with our technology, what we want to do with our network is to optimize operations, to generate cost savings for companies using our technology, and to generate new revenues. For example, we have been working with a company who was developing landing gears for planes. And these landing gears, they were rented to airline companies or to planes, fabricants. And they changed the model because at first they were selling directly the landing gears for the planes, and now they are renting them just because they can rent the uses of the product rather than selling it to the final customer. So it's changing drastically the way that people can look at their businesses, moving from product to services. And you can know when you look at this crisis that a lot of people today are looking about how they can generate new revenues, generate new services from existing or traditional businesses. And if you can compare what we do with what you can find on the market, because it was done before we arrived on the market, people were connecting things before we arrived. What we have been bringing is the way that we are providing the cheapest and reliable data to the market. Because when people talk about IoT, most of them are talking about protocols. So you have heard about a lot of protocols, 2G, 3G, 4G, 5G, Zigbee, LoRa, NB-IoT, and this kind of things. So it's a mess, it's noisy. And at the end of the day, nobody is really focusing on what the technology should bring to the final user and what are the problems that the technology is solving for a potential industry willing to use it. And it's exactly where we are focusing ourselves. We are acting every day to lower the cost of every step of data acquisition. IoT is not something important. The most important thing that you have to know and you have to keep in mind is that it's a data game. The ones who are going to win the game are not the ones who are going to have the best or the beautiful or the nicest protocol, but the one who will be able to produce the data at the best and beatable cost for the end customers. This is where the game is at the moment, and this is where we are focusing ourselves. When you look at the high bandwidth, we think that it's not designed for massive IoT. It's very useful for a lot of things. Remember my slides on the right side, it's very useless for that. But for everything related to generate accessible, affordable, anywhere and anytime, small data that you will be able to use for non-value assets, or maybe sometimes high-value assets, but moving from a point to another one, then people consider more and more what we are bringing and what we are providing to them. Why? Because we have been reducing every step of data acquisition. As you can look at the slide, we have been working on bringing cheaper modules to the market. We have been working on covering with less antennas, covering with a less expensive per unit cost. You don't have any spectrum license. You don't have, like, if you want to connect, for example, a container from Vladivostok to to Shanghai, for example, you have to go through different networks, and then as soon as you enter a network, you have to pay for roaming. In our network, as it's a unique cloud, a global contract, and a seamless service, it's one network, one contract, one service, no roaming charge. So you can track anything anywhere in the world using one device, one contract, and one single network. And you don't have any need for any network upgrade. This is where we have been doing our key differentiators. And it's possible because, as you know, we are a network. So we don't produce devices. We don't produce hardware. We don't, do these kind of things. And if you can compare it with what you can find on the market today, we all know about these global MNOs on the left of the slides, which are classic traditional MNOs were used to sell connectivity through devices that were the mobiles, and then on top of that, you used to have, and you still have, a lot of applications, and this is where the value and the money is. And this is what we have been doing, but we have been engaging ourselves because we know about this model that, selling only connectivity or providing only hardware will not be enough. The most important thing in the economy and what is going to come in the economy in the future regarding IoT is what you find here, this part, which is the number of companies that you have engaged into your strategic partnerships or ecosystem. This is where the next WhatsApp, Airbnb, and Uber will come in the future. And you will have this WhatsApp of the IoT. People will be providing services to final customers, can be B2B or B2C. And this is something that is coming very strong in the future. And this is where we have been, working a lot, because this is where that the monetization of the data will be done in the future. As you know, today, the data is done through, all the applications that we are using every day. Just to make it very, very, very short, we are a global network. I told you, we're still expanding, and you know that now we are opening, and thanks to the Sigfox Russia team, we are opening Russia, but we already are deploying and deployed into in 78 countries at the moment, and we still are deploying. The aim for us is to be able to cover on ground with our antennas in all the country. As you know, it's base stations that we provide into countries, and they are settled all over the countries to roll out the network. But we are working today on satellite coverage to be able to enable a satellite network, and we do it in partnership with Eutelsat, which is a European carrier for satellite coverage. And this is what we are doing at the moment. So we have been slowed down by the COVID, but actually I think the global satellite coverage will be, according to me, ready in about like 18 months or 2 years. As soon as you get this full coverage, you will be able to track any device, anywhere, anytime, using small amount of batteries, small amounts of money, paying small amounts of fees to use a global IoT network. Because this is where the magic of the company is. One of the most important pain for any companies, traditional companies, industrial companies willing to use IoT is that an IoT device is using a battery, and the battery consumption is one of the key pain that they have if you have to change your battery every 2 months, 3 months using like GPS technology, then it's going to be a mess when you have to deploy a network of, I don't know, 1 million devices. With our technology, sending small messages with a lot of cognitive technology behind the network, a classic length of the battery is around like 3 to 6 years. So within a frame time of 6 years, you don't have to change the battery. So it's a game changer for any traditional company willing to use our technology. If I can move forward and you tell me, stop me if I'm too long, but I'm gonna make it very quick on that part, which is the impact of COVID-19, because you know that we have been, like any companies in the world, in a way impacted, but on the other way, open to any kind of opportunities. I like the Churchill sentence, who was telling, never miss a crisis. And this is exactly what we respect what's happening in the world, because, you know, we have been looking around people around us suffering from this crisis with their health or with their social situation. And we have been, you know, involving ourselves into that crisis too. But we see and we feel that this is the time for real digital transformations. Let's say that till now, and this is what we are considering, we have been you know, looking at the market, and the market was focusing on investing in IT rather than digital. And when the crisis came, people who have been investing in digital solutions were more secure than people who have been using only investment in IT. Why? Because they were working on solution on top of their IT. And a lot of large companies and even like SMEs, traditional SMEs, were only investing into IT and get, you know, in real trouble when the COVID-19 crisis came. Why? Because they couldn't adapt. And we have been now in contact with a lot of these companies looking at tracking, looking at monitoring, looking at backupping their broadband, for example, network, coming to us and asking us for key use cases and benefits using our technology. And you have some examples here. And some of these people, now they are putting a lot of money and investing a lot on, I will be investing a lot of money on tracking the condition and location of assets at global scale, optimizing real time their supply chain. You have seen that, you know, during the crisis, supply chain was key for everything, for food, for health, for, you know, for medication, for a lot of things. The second thing was monitoring, especially resources, assets, people, and vehicles. And it was something very important during the crisis, and IoT is bringing a lot of solutions and answers into that. And the last one, and it's very interesting because, you know, nobody was able to survive without having access to internet. And every internet failures was a big problem for people in regions. And this is why, you know, the technology was important, because with our technology, and Sigfox is good for that because it's resistant to jamming. A lot of people came to us and they wanted to back up their own internet, you know, network using Sigfox technology to send some alerts regarding, you know, some failures into the network. We have been fostering significant opportunities during the crisis, and especially people who are looking to manage their system during the crisis. And we have been looking at this and considering and looking at some you know, relevant examples. Short-term, especially private companies, and long-term focus, private companies and governments. For short-term, people were coming to us for tracking the pharmaceutical, and especially in medical sectors. People were looking for returnable industrial packaging solutions. This is what we do with Sigfox, optimizing their supply chain, locating in real-time shipments. You have seen these stories about the masks and the gels. And this is, we have been doing some of this, installation for people who were willing to track their medicines and supplying to their distribution points. Some people were also, you know, asking for us to authentify their contents, you know, and fight against counterfeit, and especially in monitoring. Stock management was a lot of demands coming to us, and for security systems. Especially people who were interested to have backup for their warehouses and storing essentials. And this is where people were coming to us and asking for solutions, end-to-end solutions, devices, network, platforms, cloud. And we have been working on that with them and still working on that with them because we have many customers today coming to us and we're working with our partners to do that. On a long-term vision, a lot of people, a lot of potential customers came to us, especially for tracking system to the population, especially for vital equipment and our kits, masks, respirators, medical beds, staple food. They wanted to be able to prioritize, authenticate, locate real-time deliveries, confirm receipt, reconciliate availability and need. And a lot of people, a lot of huge companies today are into that and asking for solutions. We don't have all the solutions at the moment. We are still developing solutions. We have the technology to do that, but we need specific devices to do this. And you have to know that the most important point within the IoT system is the device. And as soon as you are able to lower the price of the device, the more the market will fly. And this is where we are focusing today our efforts with our partners. Another thing which is very important, and you will maybe probably have it in Russia, but we have it today in France. They came with an application, with an app to track and manage a crowd, to know exactly who have been suffering from the virus and to know exactly who have been in contact with someone else. So we started with an app, and now we are working with the government on a bracelet, on a wristband that will be able to track the people without any problem regarding to the privacy of the data, because this is where Sigfox is very important. We don't look at the data and we don't own the data. The data is on one platform and we don't have access to the data. And this is where we are trying to do it. And if things are possible and if countries are asking to have local hosting, it's possible with our technology and we do it very easily. And last point is around broadband backup. Telcos in the crisis context, for example, for lockdown and massive home office, they were asking to be sure that they will not have any set-top box failures during main connectivity breakdown. So we are working with a lot of potential customers, and especially MNOs looking to back up their broadband using Sigfox technology. So some of our example, we have already market-ready solutions to solve key issues. We have been working with returnable industrial packaging solutions. We have been working on tracking masks and equipment delivery, especially from China to France. Even we don't have a network in China, but we have been using some complementary technology to do that, because we can mix several technology to use our technology. It's very complementary from existing ones. But as soon as you use too much technology, then you will be using too much battery. So we have been engineering things that will be able to take the benefits of Sigfox technology using complementary technologies. As soon as you have the coverage in countries, then Sigfox take the lead on the device. We have been reusing existing solutions. For example, for elderly people, we have been developing sensors to detect abnormalities or faint, for example, in a room. We have been working on monitoring, supervising people with alert button from some retirement homes, and especially in Spain. We are working now, and I told you about it before, wallet tracker to monitor lockdown. And we have been doing it, for example, in Abu Dhabi, because we were working for the World Games for disabled people. We tracked 10,000 athletes during the games that we were disabled, and we have been working on that. And now we are replicating this into wristband to be able to address potential cities or province in China, France, or any other country, in Oman, for example. So I'm not gonna go through this, but I wanted to be clear on my presentation. I hope that I've been giving you enough details, enough information. I was quick, but I had many things to tell you. So if you have any questions, please feel free, and thank you for listening to me.
Thank you very much, Khawuti. So I propose we will have now the second presentation, and after we'll go for a session of question answers from our members. So Jacques, it's your turn now. Can you start?
Yes. Hello. Thank you very much. Thank you for inviting Dassault Systèmes to this meeting. I am right now encountering problems sharing my screen. If Maria is online, could you possibly share yours?
I'm sorry, Rauti, you should stop sharing your screen in order to Jacques or Maria to share theirs.
Okay, so that should be the reason.
Yes.
Okay. I'm not sharing anymore.
Okay, so this seems to be good now. Can you see my screen?
Yeah. Perfect, yes.
Okay.
Okay, good. Well, again, thank you very much for inviting us. My name is Jacques Beltran. I oversee basically relations with governments worldwide and development of our business in the public sector at Dassault System. And I have two of my colleagues online, Maria Kularkmetova, who is representing us in Russia, and Marion Milosevic with me at headquarters, overseeing European business development, basically. I'll do a little bit like Rauti, except that I'm not sitting on my terrace in the sun. I'm sitting in my office in Vélizy, which is much less glamour. So you won't hear the little birds, but I hope I will raise a couple of topics that may be of interest for you. What I would like to do is give you a very short overview of what we do at Dassault System, and then, as Rauti did, try and explain to you what we've been trying to do in the COVID crisis, and possibly most importantly, what we think we should be doing in the future, and how digital solutions in general can help governments, public institutions, cities better manage potentially a next crisis. Quick overview of Dassault System's history. Dassault System was born in 1981, literally from a couple of 5-6 engineers coming from Groupe Dassault. Groupe Dassault is maybe more famous than Dassault System. Groupe Dassault is the aircraft, Dassault Aviation, military aircraft and business jets manufacturer. The Falcon, for example, that you may have heard, or the Rafale aircraft, military aircraft. In 1981, a handful of engineers from that company decided to start working on 3D design, computer-assisted design for parts of aircraft. But that was for the Dassault company. And once they did that, they thought that if they were doing it for the Dassault, they could do it for the rest of the aeronautic industry. So they contacted Boeing, and it worked extremely well. And by 1989, Boeing had actually, with Dassault System software, done a full digital mock-up of the Boeing 777. This was the first time in the aeronautic industry that one company was literally dropping paper designs or 2D designs. They were going directly to 3D design of the whole aircraft, including all the parts from the biggest ones to the smallest one, and the way those parts are assembled. Ever since then, Dassault System software have been used massively in the aeronautic industry, but also in the automotive industry, in the construction, in very different sectors of life, always with the same method of building a virtual twin, a digital mock-up, 3D on computer, of the object that you want to manufacture. Having worked on the 3D modeling of things, of objects, Dassault System also started working and acquiring companies, software companies that have software in similar circles of competencies, from 3D modeling to 3D simulation, and I'll come back to that. And also not only modeling things, but modeling, 3D modeling, representing the process of manufacturing, of development of things, PLM solutions, product lifecycle management. So this is what you see in 1999 in this legacy history line of Dassault System. And now Dassault System PLM solutions are also widely used in the manufacturing industry. The next significant milestone, and somehow you see somehow milestones happen every 10 years, more or less. The next significant one was the launch of the 3D experience platform, Because Dassault System had developed software applications, there was a real need and a real value to reunite those applications into a single platform, whereby our customers could actually access the platform, which is a collaborative tool where everybody in a company or in a full supply chain can speak together, work together to design a product, to manufacture it, to market it, to communicate about it. Everything is there. So on the 3D experience platform, basically, Dassault System now provides, since 2012, a continuous workflow, digital continuity between its different applications, and therefore between the different people inside a company. The 3D experience platform, basically, I say its main value is to break silos in an organization. We use it on a day-to-day basis at Dassault System. Our 20,000 employees use it. And now most of our customers decide to work through the platform to access our 3D modeling or 3D simulation applications. Today in 2020, at the beginning of the year, our CEO announced the next frontier for us, the next step, which is to work on the virtual twin of the body, of the human body. We've been modeling things from very simple parts to aircraft, from aircraft to cities. 3D cities is also one of our big activities. And now we want to move to the 3D modeling of the human body. Because, and I'll come back to that in a second, we believe that that's where the future is. In fact, the health sector is quite, I would say, artisanal in a sense. All the industry is heavily digitalized, automatized, but the health sector still remains on a case-by-case basis. And we think there's a lot of value into working on the human body. We have already, Dassault System, done a digital twin of the heart. It's called Living Heart Project. We are working with the American Food and Drug Administration on that. We are now working on the digital twin of the brain, and ultimately we want to do a full digital twin of the human body. I mentioned to you the manufacturing industries that you see on the bottom left. This is where Dassault System was born, and it's still today the majority share of our revenues. But our ambition is to significantly grow into two sectors, which are going to be completely relevant in our discussion about COVID crisis, which is on one side, I mentioned to you the healthcare and life science sector. 1 year ago, we made a big acquisition of a company called Medidata. Medidata is the world leader for clinical trials. 50% of any new medicine drug arriving on the market worldwide has been developed using Medidata software. And the second sector is the sector of infrastructure and cities. Because the same way we model things, we know today how to model, how to represent, to do a virtual twin of cities. One of our nicest reference is in Singapore. 5 years ago, the state of Singapore asked us to do a full digital mock-up of the city of Singapore on the surface and on the ground. And they use this on a day-to-day basis to basically manage the city in all aspects. So let's go now directly to the topic of the COVID crisis and what we can do in that respect. What we tend to say is that we should distinguish two times, two periods. One is the crisis time and one is the post-crisis. Today we're still in most countries in the crisis time. Although some countries are already moving ahead. I'm thinking of Korea. South Korea is worldwide known as probably one of the countries that best managed this COVID crisis. And they are already today thinking of the future, of what are the lessons learned of this COVID crisis and how they should better deal with the next crisis in the future. And this will be my second point. But the first one is, when the crisis hits, what is it that companies like Dassault System or Sigfox can do? Digital solutions are very useful in terms of crisis if companies like Dassault System use them to provide an immediate service to the governments, to the public institutions. what we call outcome-based solutions. In other words, we're not going to sell a license for a software, because the people we're talking to, our potential customers, are literally running from one side to the other, trying to extinguish fires everywhere. They're in the heat of the crisis. What we want to do there is to help them with an immediate solution. And I have two of them there. One on the right is, we were called by Chinese authorities in the city of Wuhan, and also 2 months later in the eastern part of France, in the city of Metz. Because in both cases, in Wuhan, Chinese authorities, they were building this incredible hospital that they built in 12 days. And they said to us, okay, but we're going to put COVID patients in those rooms, hospital rooms. And we want you to simulate for us the risk of contamination by airborne, air conditioning, of the virus moving from one room to another, or one room to the corridor, because of the airflow in the room. This is what you see on the left picture. On the right, there are two pictures, and the left picture there shows basically a patient that's coughing in that room, and the airflow actually through the door, because of the air conditioning system, goes into the corridor. And then, based on that simulation, they designed the air conditioning system differently. They adopted certain mitigation measures to make sure actually that the airflow would stay in the room, and that they would significantly limit the risk of the virus going into the corridor. And then the hospital in Metz in France, it was a different situation. It was not a hospital being built. It was an already built situation, where the director of that hospital had strong suspicions that the airflow in his hospital was actually carrying the virus into areas of his hospital that he would really wanted to protect, because they were old people that were not COVID patients yet, I must say, and he wanted to protect them. And we did the simulation, the air simulation, and he immediately realized that indeed there was an airflow going from certain rooms into the corridor right through the other side of the hospital. And he was also there able to take some mitigation measures to stop that and to prevent the virus propagation. Based on that experience, and with a French-Chinese company called Aden, specialized in facility management based in China, we decided to launch a partnership for a new product, which is called Aquila Care Turnkey Hospitals. And if you allow me, I would like to show a short video about this, because I think it's very interesting, because not only the product I think is interesting, but it also shows how, if you put a company, for example, a construction company with a facility management company together with digital solutions, you can reach quite outstanding results. So I will just share this, this presentation, and I'll be back to you in a couple of minutes. What you see there is the digital twin of the hospital being designed using Dassault System solution, discussing with our customer what exactly he wants. The Aquila Care Hospital is actually a modular hospital. What you see there is modules that are pre-built, pre-manufactured, and assembled on site. And as you can see, every single detail is included in the digital twin, which is significantly going to accelerate the construction of the company and the operation, the hospital, and the operation and maintenance in the future. So as you see, it is not only the manufacturing of modules of rooms, but it also goes into the equipment. So it's a hospital that's basically provided with all the equipment, both technical equipment, medical equipment. It's a turnkey hospital that can be installed anywhere in the world in less than 100 days. And the interesting thing is that, so it is an emergency response to a crisis, 100 days, but it is also a hard hospital. It's not tense. So this hospital, the lifetime of this hospital is between 15 and 20 years. So it targets immediate crisis response, but also longer term needs in terms of reinforcing hospital capacities in a country. And you see very precise details like how to block the bed table. And this is a picture of the Wuhan hospital being built. So these here were basically two examples of what a company like Dassault Systèmes can do in the middle of the crisis. But I think most interesting for us in our discussion today, and then I'll stop and I'll be happy to answer your potential questions, is what can we do to help governments, public institutions better face the next crisis? Why am I saying this? Is because our belief is that one actually does not provide solutions to the crisis in the middle of the crisis. Solutions to the crisis have to be adopted before the crisis, because I'm talking here of complex solutions that are actually going to transform completely the way public institutions implement their public policies. How do they react to a crisis? If we want governments, local governments, national governments, cities, public companies, to be more efficient, we have to offer them digital solutions that are going to change the way they act. And I'm giving you here 4 examples of solutions, areas in which companies like Dassault Systèmes can provide solutions that are going to change things. One is, of course, the health sector. I mentioned to you this acquisition we made of Medidata. Medidata today is worldwide completely involved in the acceleration of development of drugs and vaccines. How? Because Medidata provides a digital platform that is actually going to collect the results of hundreds of clinical trials being conducted throughout the world. And by bringing together all that data, and using data analytic tools, you can reach results and significantly accelerate the speed at which drugs and vaccines are being developed. But in order to do that, of course, these solutions have to be adopted before by the pharmaceutical laboratories, of course, but also by public research institutions. The second area in which we think digital solutions can play a huge role in helping governments better face the next crisis is in providing governments with the digital solutions that will enable them ahead of the crisis to identify what are the critical goods, like masks, ventilators, that whatever happens, they must have and keep on their territory. Most governments throughout the world have been blamed for not having carefully planned about critical goods. And there are plenty of digital solutions that can actually help identify those critical goods. Most importantly, identify the critical industrial assets on the territory that will actually be key the day you have to produce massively masks or ventilators. And also digital solutions that help manage the supply chain. When supply chains are disrupted, like it has been the case in this COVID crisis, mostly with industrial bases located in China, there are digital solutions that can immediately and automatically reshuffle the supply chain and identify alternative routes to make sure that the critical industrial assets in France, in Russia, in Spain, wherever, actually receive the components that they need to be able to manufacture the critical goods. All these are solutions that are widely used in the industry, but that can be extended to the public sector. The third area, which was in fact a little bit touched upon by Rauti in his presentation about IoT, is how can we actually, through digital solutions, provide governments with cockpit kind of solutions that will enable them to have a stronger, better monitoring of the crisis, real-time monitoring. What is obvious is that most governments have not been good at actually understanding what was happening real-time in this crisis. If I take the example of France, for many weeks, I think the French government was lagging, I would say 1 month or one month and a half behind the real situation of the pandemic. There are plenty of solutions, digital solutions, that if they are all gathered in a platform like the 3D Experience platform, if we collect the data and we have data analytics tools, they enable governments to have a real-time perception of the situation. And once you have a real-time perception of the situation, like a sanitary crisis, and you can rely for that on 3D virtual twins of cities, for example, 3D city models, then when you have that information, you can make informed decisions and you can measure the impact of your decisions on the twin of a city, for example, or of a territory. So this requires rapid modernization of the tools that are used in public administration. But these tools are extremely powerful when a crisis hits, like a COVID crisis. And the fourth area, I think, is the one I call smart lockdown. Why do I call it smart lockdown? Frankly, because I think many governments have done stupid lockdown. The easiest lockdown to do is, guys, stay at home, all of you, which makes the lifting of the lockdown extremely difficult, because then you don't have a real idea of how you should do the lifting of the lockdown. And by the way, when you say to everybody, stay at home, the economic impact is huge. This is what happened in France. In France, the government said, from day one, everybody at home. And now we're in the period where the government is trying to decide carefully, region by region, city by city, who should be allowed to move into the new normal life. Very complex if you don't have the tools for that. If you have the kind of crisis monitoring tools that I mentioned earlier, then you can make very selective decisions. There were parts of France, I'm sorry, I'm mentioning a lot of France, but this is the country I know I live in, so that's why I'm taking it as a reference. There are very clear parts of France where in fact the pandemic was not very strong or sometimes inexistent. But these parts of France are being hit by the economic impact of the crisis, likewise, irrespective of the presence or not of the virus. If the French government had a tool that would actually have told to the Prime Minister, look, Mr. Prime Minister, this part of France is not hit by the pandemic. So you may say that in that city, they can carry on working. Of course, they take all the safety measures, mask, distanciation, etc. But they carry on working. At least you don't have the economic impact or less economic impact in that city. And that situation can evolve in time. Nevertheless, when you have to decide lockdown, then there are digital solutions that should allow for life to not carry on as usual, because lockdown is not a normal mode, but at least you can carry on working remote, or you can carry on studying remote. And there also, I think most countries in the world have not been very good at that. It depends a lot on the companies or on the universities, but I think for the future, a huge effort should be made in companies, in universities, in public administrations, to make sure that if, and it's unfortunate, we have to go back to lockdown mode, we can carry on working from home. I'm lucky enough to work in a company that's a system that, frankly, it has not changed anything. From one day to the other, 20,000 employees of Dassault System were working from home with their computer, access to the 3D Experience platform, and life carried on as usual. I don't see why this could not be possible in public administration, in companies, or in schools. Sorry, so I was maybe a little bit long, but I just wanted to give you an overview of different solutions that we hope could help in the future governments better manage crisis, and we're there ready to help if we can. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Jacques, for your presentation. So I hope now that our different participants will ask for their questions. In between, I would like to ask to both of you the following question. We see on one side, Sigfox is promoting the cheapest data as possible. On the other hand, Dassault is kind of collecting all this to create the digital, I would say, twin. How do you see further possible collaboration between both companies, between both technology, and would you see, for example, some local Russian startups joining what you call your ecosystem, your digital connecting world? So, who is willing to start?
It's a long question, no? I think if I may, Stefan, I think we already collaborate. We're already collaborating between Dassault and Sigfox. Maybe not directly, but through our some partners, because you know, Dassault is providing a lot of intelligence, and you know, I'm very very humble when I talk you know, in presence of Dassault, because this is the type of company that we want to look like. In France, actually, we are only a 10-year company, still a small company, even we are you know, 400 people in 70 countries. But you have to be very humble when you face a company like Dassault. So, you know, we are already collaborating with Dassault because we are very complementary. We are bringing different, you know, different values to the market. But these kind of events that we are facing today will accelerate definitely the way that we are going to work together, as we are providing a lot of solutions together to be able to address final customers. Rather they are private or public. And I totally, you know, I was totally in line with the presentation of my colleague on everything he has said, because this is exactly what we have been facing. I think the future is, you know, companies and even governments, they will have to do 2 or 3 very important things. The first is anticipating, you know, and you say that you know, you can't react, you know, facing a crisis during the crisis. It's quietly impossible. So you have to anticipate things. You don't know what's is going to happen, but you have to anticipate in a kind of case that will be able to happen to you. The second is, according to what we have been seeing, you know, most of the companies, private or public, will have to decentralize a lot of their decisions. You know, because everything was centralized, everything was, you know, top down. Even the lockdown, it was top down, and I think nobody was able to adapt to this. And the third is to be able to be open, and especially on their platforms and IT systems. Everything related to API, everything related to cloud will be a solution in the future, because it has to be something that will be able to respond quickly to any kind of crisis. I don't know if you do agree with me, Stefan, but this is the way I'm looking at things. And to do this, we are not going to do this alone. We need a lot of small and medium-sized company that will be, you know, able to develop these kind of solutions. Jacques, sorry, you know, I told you Stefan because I have a friend of mine who is his name is Stéphane Beltran, and that's why I'm. But you know, I know your name is Jacques.
No problem, Houti, no problem. Thank you. By the way, thank you for your words about Dassault System, but I was going to say exactly the same about Sigfox. So you see, we are both admiring our respective companies. I think Sigfox is just an incredible story. You say you're only 10 years old, which, given what you've achieved in 10 years, is just incredible. And I think there's a lot that we could indeed carry on doing in the future. We have some cooperations ongoing with Sigfox. Yes, we value fully the data that you provide through all your innovations. It is true in the industrial world, but I think it should be much more true in the future in the public sector, and in particular in the cities, smart cities world. I think cities today are facing two kinds of huge challenges, which actually applies to the COVID crisis. One is the planning of the transformation of a city. Because like all organizations, cities suffer from silo effect. And so this is why we decided to enter this field of the 3D city models. Because when you provide to the mayor of a city a 3D picture of his city, which is not only a video, is when you click on any item on your screen, you have information that flows in. And the strength of 3D city models is the vision, but it's the vision based on the data. This tool is extremely powerful for a city to be able to make informed decisions. And they can make decisions based on simulations, for example, of the impact of a future infrastructure. You want to build a bridge, sorry. Before you build that bridge, you are going to simulate the impact of that bridge on your city, whether it's terms of impact on the wind, the airflow, impact on the transportation traffic, impact on the pollution, on the noise, whatever you want, you can simulate. And this is, I would say, costless. I mean, it's an incredible way in the virtual world to represent the real world. And you test everything in the virtual world costless, and then you try it in the real world. That's one aspect in which cities really have to progress, and there's a lot being done in that sense. But there's another area, and this is, I think, where Sigfox and companies like Dassault Systèmes and cities could increasingly work together, is the real-time monitoring of what is happening in the city. Because this is the second thing that mayors want. They want to plan the future, but they want to assess the real-time situation. And for that, they need sensors, they need immediate flow of data. If we get that data, we know how to evaluate. We know what to do with that data to present it through our data analytics tools in a way that a mayor of a city can make an informed decision on that flow of data. But we cannot do anything if we don't have the data. And that data can come from thanks to companies like Sigfox.
And this is exactly where, Jack, we are very complementary. You know that we humans are visual animals, so we like to see things. And when you come with technologies like IoT, AI, and these kind of things, you are generating a ton of data. And if nobody is able to make it visual, then it's useless. Yeah. And this is where technologies like Dassault can be very useful, and very useful, especially for cities. You know, I have my background. I'm an urbanist. So I've been working a lot in you know, cities development. So I know how much the couple between data and image is very important for these kind of people.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, if you're an urbanist, we don't need to tell you anything. You know everything about that. It's that's the future, and that's where the need is in cities. Jan, answering your last question about whether we partner with local startup, etc. Yes, definitely, we do that everywhere. We've got actually accelerators, labs called 3D Experience Labs in different parts of the world. We welcome startups, scale-ups. We support them in all the three spheres that I mentioned to you: industrial, manufacturing, life science, and cities. And definitely, we are willing to do this in Russia. We have established a number of partnerships with universities. My colleague Maria could tell us more about that. And if we have projects, we'd be delighted to work on 3D city projects in Russia. We've actually been in contact with different cities. But if we can do in Russia what we've been doing in Singapore, in the city of Rennes, in Hong Kong, in Jaipur, in India, we'd be delighted. One important point when we speak about data with respect to cities is the security aspect of data. I haven't heard of one mayor of a city who came to me saying, I don't care where you put the data. They are all, and rightfully so, they are all obsessed with safety. And if it's data that belongs to the city, most of them today are asking that data to be stored in the city. So this is why we have both options. We have either cloud service options, and we can do 3D models on cloud, or if the city requests it, and it's increasingly the case, we can do it on premise. Again, that's another important thing. We can collect the data, but then the data is secure wherever it is. And that's a key aspect, I think.
We have been doing this also, if I may, Jan, if I have 2 minutes. You know, we are a global network, so it's a single network, and we call it a public network, actually. But when you work with governments and you know, public authorities, they all want to get access and control their data, and they want to be, and they like on-premises, you know, data to be stored. So we have been developing something which is private networks, you know, dedicated to cities or dedicated to companies who want to, you know, control their data when they are very, you know, very sensitive.
Okay.
And we do this since 1 year now, and because we have been looking at the market and adapting to the market. And the last point, and I want to join my colleague Jacques on that point, the DNA of being a startup, and even I know that's a system is still a startup because I know some people working there, and I know that they keep their mindset on that. But the answers will be coming from these young and medium companies that are bringing new solutions every day, trying, you know, testing things, failing, retesting things. You know, for example, at Sigfox, we have two programs with universities, and we have 300 universities part of our program globally in 110 countries. We have a program for what we call raising stars, people who are developing technologies, services, solutions, applications on top of the network. And we have 2,500 young companies into the program. We have global stars, which are the 30 most important startups that are developing very relevant technologies ready to market today in 45 countries. And you know, we have been developing something which is great. It's what we call the hacking house. It's a house where we welcome students from all over the planet willing to join us for 3 months and hacking subjects coming from the industry using IoT. And it's you know, they are 3 months. They are mentored by industry players to solve a problem. For example, we have been working on connected containers. We have been working on extinguishers. We have been working on so many subjects coming from ideas from the industry. And in 3 months, we are able to provide and deliver an MVP. And all that stuff, this is exactly what we want to do in Russia. And by the way, it's going to be helpful to tackle the crisis because it's gonna generate jobs, you know, for the country, generate jobs for the region, and impact on the global GDP of the country. And this is where also, you know, companies like Dassault and Sigfox can be useful for a country like Russia. You know, helping this generation of new entrepreneurs coming and creating the job of the future. This is where we are trying to stand.
Thank you, Rauti. And I think here I have from the public, from Alexander, a question regarding.
If I may, I'm very sorry, but I think that Vice President, it's important also to have this Russian point of view, and we have here Vice President of Chamber of Commerce of Russian Federation. Unfortunately, Dmitry is taken, so if he may add some comments now and leave us later, if I may ask your permission. Да, Дмитрий Николаевич, пожалуйста, понимаю, что вам нужно сейчас уходить. По-русски или по-английски?
Слышно?
Да.
Thank you very much. Tout d'abord, je vous souhaite la bienvenue au nom de la Chambre de commerce et d'industrie de la Fédération de Russie. Donc, je voudrais dire quelques mots sur la situation actuelle. I think it was quite understandable without special translation. I was just greeting on behalf of the Russian Chamber of Commerce. First of all, I'm very grateful to our today's speakers, to Rauti from Sigfox company, from Jacques from Dassault Systems for their information, which I found very helpful and instructive. especially on Aquila Turnkey Hospital. And frankly speaking, here in Russia, in the Chamber of Commerce, we are still focusing mostly on problems that our economy and our society are facing. But meanwhile, I think it's time, high time, just to switch over to the opportunities we could enjoy using this cooperation. So we are working, I mean, in the Chamber of Commerce, we are working all over Russia, in all regions, in all branches of the economy, and there are a lot of opportunities we could use. But first of all, I would like to propose to establish permanent relations with our two committees, the one of digital economy and IT, and another one is healthcare and medical and pharmaceutical industries committee, which, and this cooperation, I think, could be very promising. And that's why I would like just to have this good link to our companies. Thank you very much, and I apologize for leaving you, but my colleagues will go on and they will take part in the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dimitri. So maybe we continue with the question from the public. So from Alexander Kondrashin, we have a question about, Jacques, you speak a lot about acquisition. And the question is, what is going to be the next one? In which direction? And they are proposing you to look after their 100+ startups in the Yakutiy region. So would you be interested in this kind of, in this time, looking in these startups?
Sure. Thank you. What is our next acquisition? Of course, I cannot say, but they are acquisitions all the time, basically. I haven't gone into the financials of Dassault Systèmes, but Dassault Systèmes is an extremely profitable company and has always been. And this is why, by generating significant amount of cash, Dassault Systèmes has reinvested that cash into R&D and acquisitions. And it's permanently Dassault Systèmes working on those two legs: internal growth and development through R&D and acquisitions. Last year, Dassault Systèmes has spent 750 million euros in R&D. And in the same year, Dassault Systèmes has made a $6 billion US acquisition, the Medidata acquisition, which was the biggest acquisition ever for Dassault Systèmes in the life science sector. But we also do very small acquisitions all the time. We invest in the capital of startups, scale-ups that we believe in. We have those 3D experience labs where we welcome, we accompany. And sometimes we often do open innovation. For example, in the COVID crisis, we opened a open innovation COVID innovation platform on the 3D experience platform, where basically big companies, startups, hospitals, whoever could actually post a message saying, I'm based in India and I urgently need a new ventilator because I cannot buy it on the local market. Can somebody manufacture a ventilator for me? And we got a car manufacturer that said, well, I've got machines, industrial equipment. They could manufacture a respirator, but I don't have the 3D model. And then we got somebody else saying, I've got the 3D model. I don't have the machine. I don't have the spare parts. And there's one guy from Dassault Systèmes India who said, okay, I'll use the 3D model. I will design with Dassault Systèmes software the missing part. And then he put that back onto the platform. And this was going on. It happened in less than 5 days. And 5 days afterwards, the new model was there with the new spare parts, and they started manufacturing the respirator for the hospital. It was just amazing. So this open innovation, we not only like it as an idea and we encourage it, but we put our tools, our platform, our software available when a crisis like that hits. When it's not in a crisis mode, we do it through our 3D Experience Lab. We welcome startups that come, they want to test an idea. We select them, of course, because we believe in their project, and we give them access to our tools, to our software, but also to our people. every employee at Dassault System has the possibility to voluntarily support startups up to 10-15% of his time freely, doesn't get any revenue for that. It's just because he likes to do that, and he's going to give some of his expertise to help the startups. So in terms of acquisition, we do some all the time. If our interlocutor from Yakutia wants to get in touch with us regarding potential startups, we'd be very happy to do so. We've got Maria Kulakmetova online. I'm sure the organizers of this conference of the chamber can make the contact, and Maria will be able to explain to you to organize a meeting and to follow up.
On our side, we are fighting not to be acquired. So as we still we are a scale up, and we are fighting because we don't want to be acquired now. We think it's too early, as we are working on deploying our network and fine tuning the way that we are addressing the market. But we already are looking to invest or acquire a company in the next future, and especially it will be around data monetization. Data acquisition and monetization, which is something very important for us. Data rendering also. So, and I would be definitely interested to have a look at the portfolio of companies of your region, especially for people who are in the IoT sector, especially people doing devices, platforms, software, but also people who are developing AI solution, blockchain solution, because blockchain is very important when you do IoT, and it's more and more important. People today they want to track and trace, but they want also to identify and authentify what they are tracing. So definitely I will be very interested. And on the other side, for my background, I've been creating one of the largest incubator in France and Europe with more than 300 companies. So for my personal information and interest, because I'm also an investor, I could be interested also.
Okay. Adrien, maybe on your side, you have some questions from the public we have not seen?
Peut-être je peux vous répondre. Merci beaucoup à vous. Nous chercherons quelques...
Alexander, I'm so sorry, but it's English and Russian, because our translator
thank you so much for being so open for future dialogue. We will then look forward to establishing a platform where we can exchange ideas and introduce to some of our companies that could, with your help, become unicorns faster. We have some unicorns here in Yakutia, such as InDriver, Maitona, and Fantastic. Very, very significant. If you look by downloads, our company, the company from Yakutia, InDriver, has recently beat most of the giants in the market, and a whole flock of newcomers is out there, and they are present in precisely the areas you mentioned, such as IoT, data storage, monetization, and so on and so forth. And we'll discuss this with the committee chair and the chamber. Thank you.
For your information, unicorns will not be the reference anymore. Okay, not really. I tell you, it's gonna move to camels. Not really. I tell you, I'm serious. Yeah, because the crisis, the COVID crisis, gave everybody on the startup scene information about what should be sustainable companies, and they should look like more camels than unicorns. You will see it's going to come very, very quickly. They are keen to cross the desert easier than unicorns, and that's why you're going to see that the terms will change in a very short future.
That's a beautiful metaphor. Unless it's copyrighted, I'll use it from now on.
Any other question? Maybe Aurélie from the public? Adrien, I propose you ask your question. Adrien?
Yes, yes, I'm here. So I have a couple of questions for our speaker. You mentioned that we are working on smart city, safe city, and now we also need actually with this COVID-19 to see the lesson learned that we need also more anticipation, and digital tools can help. Do you see a change on your side how the regional, national authorities react on a digital solution to help them in the future to mitigate this kind of crisis? Do you see a new level of, let's say, adoption to your solution now? Is it going to be a game changer for you? And do you see it worldwide? You explained that you are doing in Wuhan and in Metz cities this hospital simulation. Is it something that you see in Europe and in Asia, or is it some different level of readiness and quick response on that?
Thank you, Adrien. On the first part of your question, are governments' regional, national attitude towards digital solution changing because of the crisis? I think it is yet a little bit too early to determine, but if I had to bet, I would say yes, definitely. For two reasons. The first one is that in most countries, governments are already or are in the future going to be heavily blamed for how they manage this crisis. So the weight on their shoulder is going to be huge. In many countries, there are elections coming up very soon. It's in 5 months' time in the US, it's in 2 years' time in France. It's in many countries the same. And I think most of the political debates during those electoral periods will focus on how the governments manage or mismanage the crisis. So therefore, I think they have a very strong incentive to act. And one of the ways they can act is by saying, okay, at that time, we didn't have the tools, digital solutions to react. Now we're going to make those investments because that's investments for the future to better face the next crisis. So I think this political leverage, the political pressure is going to be a very strong leverage for them to act. And the second reason why I think, yes, indeed, it may change is that those same governments are injecting huge amounts of public money into economic stimulus plans. If you have a look at the European Commission announcement yesterday, the European Commission has announced a stimulus plan of 750 billion euros. It's just huge, huge money. You can expect the same in the US. You can expect the same in most countries. And if you have a look at what are the priorities, for example, of the European Commission and of European state members at the European Council, well, they have two. One is sustainable development. The other one is digitalization. And by the way, the two go together. So there is going to be some political pressure and therefore political will. There is some fresh magic public money injected. I don't see how those two elements could not go together and provoke a major change. Of course, there's going to be internal opposition, conservatism, not invented here syndrome. And this is the work of companies like Sigfox or Dassault System to go and address those public administrations and tell them, look, it works in the industry, why wouldn't it work in the public sector? So that's for the first part of the question. Second one about differences between Europe or Asia on, for example, on Wuhan hospital, what we did. I think those solutions are going to be adopted massively. We did it for hospitals. In fact, we are today speaking to airline companies, to train operators, to airport management authorities, because they are all facing the same problem. We're even talking to, because they asked us to a music hall opera. Why? Because in 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 3 months, they are going to reopen their service. Culture, transportation, commercial malls, shopping malls. They have to reopen to the public, and they have two huge problems. One is safety, and the other one is profitability. Through simulation, if you simulate the risk of propagation of a virus, you can help these people decide on mitigation measures that are going to help them solve the difficult equation between, okay, I need to protect the people who go into my airplanes, but at the same time, I need to fill up the cabin because if I have only 2 passengers, I'm going to die. And this difficult equation between safety and profitability can be partly solved using simulation tools. This is the beauty of it. Again, I said the virtual world enables you to test anything without any risk and with very little cost. So you can simulate extreme scenarios and then choose the one that you prefer.
I do agree. So you were, Jacques was complete. So I don't have many more things to add because, you know, he gave us a brilliant vision of the situation. I just want to tell you something on my side, which is at the moment, most of them are knocked out, really. You know, it's like they have been boxing and they don't know where, you know, they're being eating from. So they don't know actually. So now they have to take care of very proximity people, proximity situations, and they don't have like another view of what they are going to do in the future. But definitely, I can tell you something that we gain 10 years in terms of technology adoption and digital solution adoption. I'm sure of that, because some of their people, and especially in the smart city area, they already took you know, contact with us, asking us to talk about the way that we can think of the next future for their organization, especially how they can digitalize their existing traditional way of doing things. So I'm sure that we gain 10 years, but still, and Jacques, you know, told us, you will still have people who will be rejecting the solutions because they want to, you can see it when you look at the applications regarding tracking and tracing. Still people, they want to push back and say, we don't want this. But at the end of the day, everybody will need that. So we gain 10 years. And according to me, there is something new, and I can see it. Most of the contact we have are coming from non-expected countries. And I think that the situation will, redefine the forces globally. And I think that, you know, everybody now is taking the race at the same departure. And according to me, some countries will take huge benefits from the crisis, and some will lose a part of their leadership. And I'm sure of that. For example, I have many countries from the Middle East asking for solutions and ready to adopt these solutions now. And a few European countries asking for them. So I think that it will, the game will be changing at the global scale, not only in Western countries.
Yeah.
Speaking about how that crisis is going to be a game changer on the global model, we also see that the Western industrial model, actually economy model as well, which was based on a global supply chain, high path of productivity and consumption, is going to change radically. And we see also that national borders are rising. We are now locking countries, Schengen area, and so on. So even actually recently on the digital world, some countries also are now shaping their own web network, just in case. How all this new path is going to impact your business model and also your future solution?
We have to adapt.
Thank you. Go ahead.
No, go, Jacques. No worries.
Thank you, Adrien, for your questions. I mean, they're spot on to the big hot issues. I'm like you. I think that there's a big risk that conclusions are drawn from this crisis, and there might be a huge phenomenon of relocalization to be less dependent on supply chains based abroad. In the immediate term, I would say for a Dassault system company, for example, it could actually bring more business to us because our customers will want to relocate their industrial assets, and for that they're going to need digital solutions. Fine. In the longer term, I think this is probably negative for the future of the global economy. I mean, closing down borders and restricting trade has never been something positive, and there's a big risk that we go towards that. I think that the solution is not in the relocalization. I think the globalization is a reality. It's already there. So there may be some sort of close down for some time, but naturally it'll come back. There's no way we can do business without establishing yourself in the countries where you want to do business. So you have to locate your activities partly, and therefore your supply chain becomes multinational. What I think, however, that is going to change is the ability of all the industrial companies to flexibilize their manufacturing process and supply chain, so that when a crisis hits, they immediately change their supply chain, they adapt to a new context, they transform their industries. I mentioned to you car manufacturers that turned into respirator manufacturers. We had that phenomenon in many different countries in the world. Why? Because car manufacturers use industrial equipment, robots, that actually from day one, if you plug in the good software, they can actually start manufacturing respirators instead of cars. So the industrial asset is there. And if we, from a national government point of view, start thinking in terms of industrial assets and not only in terms of goods, then you can identify in a country those key industrial factories, manufacturing lines that can be adaptable. And those companies actually themselves could even create a new business model by saying, okay, we manufacture cars today, but if you want me to do something else, very easily, just let's move on with digital solutions to a new production line. This flexibility, I think, is going to be the new future, more than a permanent relocalization phenomenon.
According to me, on top of that, I think nothing will really change. Okay, everybody's waiting for the new normal, or you know, everybody thinking that things are going to change, and we are going to go through a very localized world, which, according to me, is not possible. Why? Because we are part of a global ecosystem, and especially when we are companies, we don't do things alone. No, there is no company who is working and doing things alone. It doesn't exist. We are all part of global chain, added value chain, where some of your partners are in your country, others, and most of them are in other countries. So you're part of something big, which is, let's say, a bamboo forest, you know, globalized, and you're part of this. So this is not going to change. Where things are going to change, according to me, is that maybe the value will be shared differently. Maybe we're going to share the value maybe differently. And the other thing, according to me, I don't know, but maybe we're gonna go through the era of more joint ventures between technology producers and technology users. I think that because I think it's a trend. A lot of traditional businesses who understand now that their future rely on technology usage definitely will want to be part of this ventures. And according to me, we will assist to a lot of joint ventures between traditional people, you know, having like an expertise in one sector, and technology people who are going to be T-shaped. So I think we're going to assist to this, people bringing expertise to technology, and technology to expertise. And this is, according to me, this is where we are going today.
Thank you very much for this conclusion. So the time of our committee is going to the end. So I would like to thank very much Jacques and Rauti for their very interesting intervention. As a conclusion, I would say that what we learned today about digital infrastructure is that we have more than ever to plan the future, to plan what is not, what we don't know what is going to happen. And that this crisis shows that even with the fastest startup, you can respond, but you cannot respond as fast as the crisis asks. And we will have an acceleration of all the digital adoption, more and more tools, more and more able to work from anywhere in the world. I think, Jacques, what you just told us is that a factory digital ready will be able to produce today cars, tomorrow other tools. So really acceleration of the digital adoption, and everything will be linked with platforms, interlinked between the people, how they are able to work together, and it will be more of kind of a big ecosystem than one company doing something for themselves. So thank you very much for this time, and I hope you enjoy it, and wish you welcome for the next committee, which may be digital or not, we still don't know, but will be soon.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for inviting us. It was a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you very much.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
До свидания.